Welcome to Talking Jazz. My guest today is Alexis Cole, incredible vocalist, composer, arranger, entrepreneur, so many things. And it's great to have you here. Welcome, Alexis.
Thank you so much, Monica.
We'll talk about some of your music, and this is actually music that's from a brand new album. So this is kind of cool. And it takes you back, I guess, to some adventures you had previously. Let's start with some of your background. You come from, yes, of course, vocalist, but actually army too, and all these kinds of things. So give us a little synopsis of how you started and got into this and got to where you are now.
So, actually, I'm from a musical family, sort of. My father, who I didn't grow up with, is a piano player and singer. And my mother's mother, my maternal grandmother, was also a piano player and singer. So I have it on both sides of my family. She wasn't a professional, but actually she was when she was young, but there was a bar fight in a bar she was playing, and she got hit in the eye with a bottle. And so her family prohibited her from singing professionally after that. So she didn't go into it. She became a mom and stuff. But when I was a little girl, she would take me around to all the country clubs. And at that time, in the 80s, a lot of the jazz musicians would spend the winters down in Florida. So we had amazing sessions there. And my grandmother would take me to these they weren't really jam sessions. They were just where people were playing, but she knew them. She would take me to these gigs and she would sit in with them and saying, it was really a great way for me to get an early introduction. And she would teach me songs in the pool, when I would go visit her in her condo on the beach. And, I learned Pennies from Heaven. That was the first song I learned, and All of Me, and these other songs, It Had to Be You. I was always singing, in choirs and solo opportunities in school. And then in high school, I went to the New World School of the Arts in Miami, which is a wonderful magnet school, really incredible, with a great college program. I graduated high school with 2 years of community college, essentially. At that time, I was doing musical theater there, and I thought I was going to go into musical theater, except that I'm really not very good at acting, and I'm definitely not good at dancing. In my senior year, I responded to an ad that somebody had put up on the bulletin board that said that a singer was needed for a gig on a South Beach hotel. I responded to the ad, and he said, well, to audition, you're going to need to learn some songs. And he gave me a cassette tape of Ella Fitzgerald and Billie Holiday and Frank Sinatra, Sarah Vaughan. And he said, these are the songs I want you to learn, all standards. And I said, well, what if I don't get the job? I'll have learned all these songs. And he's like, yeah, then you'll have learned all these songs. Go learn the songs. It's a corny gig. So seriously, from humble beginnings, because he was a vibes and marimba player. So it was him solo with band in the box accompaniment tracks. That was the gig. And live chick singer. That was the gig, $50 a night. And I got the gig and I learned all those songs. And I just said, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do with my voice. I have a low voice and I love improvisation. I hate to do something the same way twice. And so as soon as I was really introduced to jazz, of course I had been introduced much earlier from my grandmother and these gigs and stuff, but I just didn't really put two and two together somehow. It was through this gig that I came to realize that I should sing jazz. Thankfully, that was in time for me to change directions for college because I was looking at schools for musical theater. And I ended up first at the University of Miami in their jazz program and then transferred to William Patterson in New Jersey, where just last semester I joined the faculty. So I loved William Patterson. That was really great. And my mentor, Nancy Morano, was teaching there. It was her first year. I was so lucky, and just sort of went on from there. And so, yeah, you mentioned about the Army. So actually, I didn't join the Army till I was 33. So I had those years from whatever you graduated 21 or 2 and then until 33. So for that, decade, just tried to freelance in New York City, which is really difficult to do. And I got my first teaching job at the 92nd Street Y, teaching private voice lessons. I got my master's at Queens College. About 5 years after my undergrad, I decided to go back for my master's. And then I ended up teaching in Ecuador at the University of San Francisco in Quito, Ecuador. It's a Berkeley College of Music outpost there. So it was a really great experience. I did it for one semester. That was all I, was contracted and wanted to do. They were looking for a full-time faculty member to come down. After that, on my way home from that gig, I stopped in Florida. My grandmother had passed away while I was down there, and she left me $10,000. And my mother said, what are you going to do with your $10,000 that Nana gave you? I said, well, I'm going to save $5,000 for bills because I'm responsible. And then I said, I want to go to Japan because I have a friend who was there, and we had a musical project that we hadn't finished. I figured I'll go see Japan and I'll meet the friend. And I got up from that conversation, and my grandmother must have been listening from the heavens. And there was an email in my inbox that said, does anybody know anybody who is available for 3 months, starting in 3 weeks, who can play piano and sing for a gig in Japan? And I had nothing going on because I was just coming from Ecuador. I didn't have an apartment or, a job or a boyfriend or anything. So I went to Japan, and that started 3 years where I just went back and forth between New York and Japan for these 3-month contracts. I did 4 of them altogether. And then at the end of that, the reason I stopped doing that was because I heard about Nancy Morano actually told me about the audition at West Point to sing in the West Point band. And I said, oh, I can't audition. I'm going to Japan. But it turned out the audition was set for the week that I was returning from my 3-month tour in Japan. So meant to be. So I auditioned. That was in 2009 and got the job and sang for the next 6.5 years with the West Point band and, moved to Peekskill, New York, the Hudson Valley. I mean, the fact that I got one of those jobs, highly coveted military, vocalist jobs right outside of New York City was just amazing and really laid the groundwork for all the records I made during those years. I didn't gig as much as I would have been hoping to because the job was very demanding and you couldn't really make plans because if they needed you, you had to be there. But I recorded prolifically during that time. I made 4 records for Venus Records, 2 for Motema Music, 2 for Chesky Records, all during the time I was in the Army. In 2015, I decided it was time to leave the Army band. I had only meant to stay for 3 years, so the fact that I stayed for 6.5, was such a great job. Things were changing over there with the jazz band. They cut down from a big band, so it wasn't the same, and I hadn't meant to stay so long anyway. So I left. As soon as I decided to leave, amazingly, I got hired at SUNY Purchase to direct the jazz vocal program there. So that overlapped my last year in the Army. It was my first year at SUNY Purchase. And now we have a thriving program there. Really amazing. Our singer, Samara Joy, just graduated in May, and now she's like an international superstar. And now we have Anais Reyno there with us. She's also a star. Even at 17, she put out her first album with Emmett Cohen. So it's a really amazing program thanks to our director, Pete Malinverni, who really loves vocals and gets it, and really does all he can to make the vocal program thrive. And I'm so lucky to be there. So that brings us pretty much to today, where I'm teaching at William Patterson and SUNY Purchase, and now at Western Connecticut State University as well. And working, of course, now I started jazzvoice.com, which maybe we'll talk a little bit more about later. I think that's the life of a musician, is just to find opportunities. And, I always say to my students, go through the open doors. And my life hasn't been a straight line, but I've found opportunities by taking the ones that came to me and saying yes.
It's such a example of the entrepreneurial spirit and what you have to do as a musician of saying yes and putting it and piecing it together. It's not one straightforward way. And yes, we'll talk more about that, and especially about the jazzvoice.com, but I think we should throw in some music so we
Great.
get a taste of all these accomplishments. And we're going to have Across the Universe, which is from your new album and kind of takes you back to your Army years with the big band. And the arranger, I believe, Scott Archangel, is somebody you met.
So all the music on the new CD, which is called Sky Blossom, Songs from My Tour of Duty, these were all the arrangements that I sang when I was in the West Point band. Of the 12 tracks, 9 of them are arranged by Scott Archangel, who was our music director.
All right, let's go back to the Army years. And this is especially cool. It's a Beatles song, of course, but in a very unique and different take.
I want to say we pulled this arrangement together for a Beatles concert. Being a musician in the Army isn't always, I loved the job and it was really great, but sometimes it was really difficult for me to hear no, or to have to put my musical preferences aside to something else. And so for this song, I really loved its message, nothing's going to change my world, where it's sort of like, I'm an artist, I have my own spirit, and this is only temporary. And whereas the spirit lives longer and deeper. And so it was and it was at the end of my career there, which is always a difficult time when you're separating. So it was a really important message at that time for me to sort of share for myself. And also after the arrangement was done, I hired the sound design artist called Wazy Lizard, Sebastian Nuat, out of Iceland. And he, at the end, about minute 4, you'll hear on the track, there's some cool overtone singing and some other kind of distortion sounds. He put those on for me because I just wanted it to kind of have a different texture.
Very cool arrangement. Let's have a listen. So here is Across the Universe from the brand new album Sky Blossom by my guest today, Alexis Cole.
words are flowing out like endless rain into a paper cup. They slither wildly as they pass way across the universe. Pools of sorrow, waves of joy are drifting through my open mind, possessing and caressing me. Jaya Guru Deva. Nothing's gonna change my world. 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 Images of broken light which dance before me like a million eyes. They call me on and on across the universe. Thoughts meander like a restless wind inside a letterbox. They tumble blindly as they make their way across the universe. Jaya Guru Deva. Nothing's gonna change my world. 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 Sounds of laughter, shades of earth are ringing through my open ears, inciting and inviting me. Limitless, undying love which shines across me like a million suns. It calls me on and on across the universe. Jaya Guru Deva. Nothing's gonna change my world. 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 Jaya Guru Deva. Jaya Guru Deva. Jaya Guru Deva. Jaya Guru Deva.
That was Across the Universe, an arrangement of course, the popular Beatles song from the new album Sky Blossom, a 2021 release by my guest today, Alexis Cole, who you heard on vocals. Alexis has shared with us the background, how she got to singing and those prominent Army years, but you also mentioned that you're now teaching at 3 colleges. You have jazzvoice.com. You obviously have some dedication to teaching here. Tell us a little bit about jazzvoice.com and how you approach teaching.
Well, I'll give you the origin story of jazzvoice.com, which is I was in my cabin during the pandemic and I was doing plumbing and got a chainsaw and did some roofing and, made some how-to videos. And actually I made a little series of singing how-to videos after I was done with my, handy woman how-to videos. And it led me to thinking, wow, wouldn't it be great if there was a website now that we were all teaching online, because all the college teachers had to go online to finish up the semester that spring. Wouldn't it be great if all these new teachers who are online, if I could put them together on a website, if someone could, that would not me, someone put them on a website where they could access students, and you could just buy a lesson with whoever. I thought, wow, that's a really great idea. Someone should do that. For about 3 days, it kind of ate at me and I was like, someone should do that. I should do that. And I thought of all the years that I'd been going to first IAJE and then Jen and all the people I know. And then also I was the vice president of the Vocal Jazz Coalition, New York chapter. That was an organization that in the past that was really a great networking for singers. I mean, I know 1,000 singers, maybe 2, I don't know. And I know so many educators and teachers and professionals. And I just thought, wow, I should do it. There was actually a grant from my high school, which goes to show how important, these grant opportunities are, that generosity, because it really did stimulate me gave me a deadline. So I thought I want to get the site up in time to apply for the grant. And I did. I worked day and night. I was here at the cabin by myself with no external stimulation and no responsibilities. The semester was pretty much over. And I just worked literally day and night for about 2 months, figuring out how to make the website, work and changing the model to be a subscription model where we have classes and stuff. Anyway, it took a few months and we applied for the grant. A friend helped me with the grant application, but I didn't get the grant, but instead I got a website, and by the 3rd month, we already had about 100 members of the website. So it was really amazing. And we have member classes where people who are these subscribing members can come on and just be part of the Zoom. The memberships are extremely affordable, starting at just $15 a month. It was really a great place to share. It really capitalizes on my ethos, which is that art making should be for everyone, not just reserved for professionals. And I'm really grateful that I get to be a professional musician. But it's much more important to me, that everybody get to make art, because we've kind of compartmentalized that. Even sports, we don't play sports anymore. We just watch sports on TV and let other people play games. Those are games. We should be playing games. It's fun. It's how we communicate with each other in a deeper way and find more meaning in life. Jazzvoice.com is not just, for professional students who want to become professional singers. It's for amateur singers, ama meaning for the love of, and it's for semi-professionals who, want to get out there on the weekends and do some gigs. And it's for hobbyists, or people who are just interested. So I really love that it's so inclusive and there's something for everyone. And we start a lot of our classes speak to people on a very basic level. I like to do the very beginning theory classes, because seeing people understand something where they've been mystified their whole lives, like, oh, I just hate that exclusivity that jargon gives. I just love it to see that flash of understanding when somebody really explains something to somebody, taking their time, making sure that they get it. So that's a sort of specialty of mine, which I think is really helpful for singers, because not all singers have the background that instrumentalists have. And I mean, I'm lucky I had piano lessons growing up, but even when I went to college, I spent my freshman year with my, scraping my jaw off the floor after every class, like wondering what they were talking about, even being able to read music and having had theory classes in choir and stuff like that. So that's a lot of why I love to teach. As far as at my colleges, I actually spend a lot of time there trying to convince students not to study music in college. So far, I haven't been very successful. It's not a great idea to get a music degree. You have to have so much together to make that work for you. But what's great is doing some other job that you also find somewhat fulfilling, and also singing. You don't need a degree to sing. When I was in college, you couldn't have told me that. Actually, it's kind of funny because Whit Seidner, the director of University of Miami at the time, he told me, he's like, my freshman jury, oh, I bombed. You're a smart girl. Why don't you take up an academic? And actually at the time I was taking this master's level philosophy class, and I was the only one doing the reading. So I did love academic study, and and I really got a lot out of that. But I was like, you don't know me, but I'm a singer. There's nothing else I can do on this planet. This is all. And I think if you have that mentality, you should be in music school, because what else can you do? There's nothing that person could do. But people who I see that aren't passionate, that don't do the work, that I don't want them to get this degree, it's the degree's only as good as the things that you learn while you were getting it, because you're not really certified to do anything when you graduate from college with a fine arts degree.
Yeah, I usually say, you know, if there's anything else you think you can do that. Because you're right. I mean, it's difficult and there's no reason, you know, it's kind of hard how we define success, you know, in terms of music. Success means you have to be suffering and, you know, not do anything else. And it's just determined by how much percentage of your time or income comes from that part. That's called success. But there's other ways to define that. And I love the way you describe that.
Oh, thank you. I think also people who do music as a hobby, I think they get so much out of it. They love it. They just enjoy it. You know, but when music's your job too, it's much less frequent that I have those moments, you know, where I'm just like, oh, I get to play. Here we go. We're going to play. I'm like, how many people are in the house? Oh, did so-and-so show up? Oh, this drummer's like, oh, and now, you know, it's going to make me look bad. Or, oh, is the video coming on? Oh, is that person live streaming? I didn't want them to do that. Or, you know, there's just so many things. Did we get paid? How was the travel? Did I eat? You know, there's like, it's just a lot. And when you can finally get to those moments where you're just really sitting back and enjoying playing, it's beautiful. It's the best thing ever. But they're few and far between.
So, I think that's actually a good setup to go and listen to Joy Spring. Where's the joy here?
There is so much joy, you know, and I know I'm saying those negative things, but, you know, there is a lot of joy. This is actually the first arrangement that Scott wrote for me to sing with the band, because it was a song that he had heard me sing and he loves the song. The lyric is actually written by a woman, Jezra Kay, in Brooklyn. It's not the Jon Hendricks lyric. And I really love this lyric. It's about sort of the community spirit, having the time to say hello and give a smile. Feeling real good is in style. I just love this lyric. And I love Jezra. She's an amazing woman. And of course, Clifford Brown's incredible melody can't be beat.
Let's get into some Joy Spring mode here. Yeah. So this is Joy Spring from the new album Sky Blossom by my guest today, Alexis Cole. And
yeah, and at the end, you'll hear it goes into 5/4 for a minute. Yeah. And Scott knows I studied singing. I forgot to mention that in the intro, but I studied singing in India. And I just love world music and that sort of an improvisation in that style. So you'll hear a little bit of, he Alexified it at the end there.
That's a great word. All right, we'll hear the Alexified version of Joy Spring from the new album Sky Blossom, featuring my guest today, Alexis Cole.
Season, watching the flowers blooming up out of the ground, watching the snow melt down, boy. You may take winter time, but spring is my joy. It's got me feeling so glad the days are breezy. You've got the time to say hello and give a smile, feeling the good is in style. You may take winter, boy, but spring is my joy. It's something special, and you observed it makes you glad to be alive. It's not absurd to say that spring helps you survive the winter's long, miserable snow and rain. It gives you hope to know that spring will get a refrain. You gotta believe the day is coming, the world is humming, thinking about how it will be, and not gonna stop it for me. You may take winter, boy, but spring is my joy. Special, observe, you're glad to be alive. Spring helps you survive what is long, miserable snow and rain. It gives you hope to know spring will get a refrain. Believe the day is coming. The world's thinking about how good it'll be, and that goes double for me, double for me. Spring is my joy. La 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 la.
Joy Spring, featuring my guest today, Alexis Cole, on the vocals. And we're having a great conversation on teaching, on careers and success, and how difficult it is, and not gotten easier over that last year to create creative or artistic career. And there's a lot of entrepreneurship involved and entrepreneurial spirit, meaning you have to be willing to create your own space from the ground up, from no resources, and growing it little by little. It's a daunting task, and it takes a lot of outside skills, not necessarily the music skills, but something that you mentioned earlier. You said, you were taking that philosophy class and doing all the readings and nobody else was. I think musicians, in the way they train, have such a leg up in terms of their organizational skills and the way they use their minds to make projects. And I'm pretty sure when you put that jazzvoice.com together, your musician mind was of much help to do that. You talked about how you share with your students to go outside, but do you encourage them to do their project? How do you give them career training?
Well, first I want to mention, we talked about my father and my grandmother being my musical influences. My mother is actually in business. She actually was a representative for years for the NFIB, the National Federation of Independent Businesses. She just loved her clients, and of course it's a membership. She's selling memberships. She was in sales, but she just loved going in and seeing what they're doing from an outside perspective and helping them to make their businesses better. And she was so passionate about it, especially the people that she really loved. She wanted to see them succeed. She had so many jobs, over the years. She was never content at a lot of places because she'd see all the sort of mismanagement and the things that they could be doing better, and it really bothered her. And so she would end up either quitting or getting fired a lot of the time. Nobody likes to hear what they're doing wrong, from some secretary. She always tells me when I tell her about my success in business or whatever, she says, well, that's because I taught you supply and demand in the bathtub when you were 3 years old. I really do feel like she has influenced me a lot to just have that entrepreneurial mindset and thinking, well, nobody's going to do it for you. You have to do it yourself. And not to be afraid of trying new things, and also not to be afraid of business itself, because a lot of artists feel that it's anathema to making their art. And I feel like, if you're making your art all by yourself and no one's on your party train, and not to say that visionary artists who've been beyond what popular understanding is that's a valid thing. But I don't know. I want people on my party train with me, enjoying my music, and I want to get out there and share what I'm doing with other people and not just keep it to myself. So that all takes the same kind of skills that you would in business if you were selling something. So a lot of being a musician is kind of a sales job.
Exactly. And the idea of not touching the business side because it taints your art, that's often a mentality, but you're right. I mean, no business would ever start out without making a business plan, right? Mm-hmm. So why would you start a business, which is you putting yourself out there without a plan and without putting that in place? There's nothing bad about it, right?
When I was young, I used to say I'll never sell out. And I don't even think I've never been even given the opportunity to sell out. That's just not how it is. It's so much more holistic. And maybe when I was in the Army, I did have to sing whatever they wanted me to sing. It wasn't there were a lot of choices and we did a lot of repertoire that I wanted to do. But if there was something I didn't want to do, it didn't really take it into account too much, But it didn't, when I did those things, it didn't at all feel like selling out. It was just I'm not really enjoying doing that, but this is my job. You know, it's just so much less black and white. When I was a kid, I just thought it was this, I don't know what I thought was going to happen in my career, but I wasn't going to sell out. That hasn't really been a problem. And it's nice that we do a music, you know, that is appealing to, you know, so I feel bad for like people who do like 20th century classical music and, you know, other music that might be harder for people to understand. Like you don't get a gig in a restaurant playing 20th century classical music, you know, you have to really organize that and find your audience and stuff. And the same with like modern dancers. And, you know, I just think there's a lot, or composers, you know, that are doing new music. I don't know, or classical musicians even. We're so lucky doing music that's at least somewhat popular in our culture. But you mentioned with the students. So yeah, when my students are, you know, in their junior or senior year, you know, I help them build a website. You think that young people are on social media, but they're not always leveraging their social media for their music career yet. So I help them think about it that way. And yeah, we definitely talk about getting gigs. If they're ready to get gigs, you know, I help them plan how to do that, put together their EPK and stuff.
Well, you know, that kind of leads us into this next one, New York State of Mind, right?
Billy Joel, we did a Billy Joel concert at West Point, one of our Trophy Point Summer Series concerts. And Billy Joel actually used to live in Highland Falls, which is how he got that song, Summer Highland Falls. And it's right next, Highland Falls is the town that abuts West Point. So it felt extra special to be singing that in his old stomping grounds. Scott's arrangement of this is actually based on my arrangement, my piano trio arrangement. I used to sing this song when I was in Japan. When I would feel homesick, I would play the song because it just reminded me of home. And this features Derek James on saxophone.
So here is New York State of Mind from the 2021 release Sky Blossom, featuring Derek James on saxophone. And of course, my guest today, Alexis Carr.
Some folks like to get away, take a holiday from the neighborhood, hop a flight to Miami Beach or to Hollywood. I'm taking a Greyhound on a Hudson River line. I'm in a New York state of mind. I've seen all the movie stars and their fancy cars and their limousines. Been high in the Rockies under the evergreens. I know what I'm needing and I don't want to waste more time. I'm in a New York state of mind. Oh, it was so easy living day by day, out of touch with the rhythm and blues. But now I need a little give and take, the New York Times or the Daily News. Comes down to reality, it's fine with me 'cause I've let it slide. Don't care if it's Chinatown or a riverside. I don't have any reasons, I've left them all behind. I'm in a New York state of mind. With the rhythm and blues. But now I need a little give and take, the New York Times or the Daily News. Comes down to reality, it's fine with me 'cause I've let it slide. Don't care if it's Chinatown or a Riverside. I don't have any reason, left them all behind. I'm in a New York state of mind.
That was New York State of Mind, a selection from the album, the new album, Sky Blossom, by my guest today, Alexis Cole, who you heard on vocals. You know, in jazz, there's always a interesting relationship between vocalists and instrumentalists. You're adding the words, you're standing in front, and the instrumentalists are behind you. So that already gives a interesting dynamic to it. Also the repertoire, right? There's a very specific repertoire, as you mentioned earlier, that you're expected to know as a vocalist, which is part of that great American songbook. You're obviously reaching beyond with the repertoire. It seems to be the expectations still. How do you see it evolve in terms of, you know, getting beyond, and what's the new repertoire? Let's talk a little bit about this repertoire for vocalists.
I feel like in colleges in America, it's really a given that American songbook songs will be learned in school. Mm-hmm. And that is shown, you know, when students graduate, they go out to play in New York and everybody has a certain baseline of repertoire. But I also teach in Europe a little bit, and the students there, they do not seem the least bit interested in learning the Great American Songbook. And it drives their teachers nuts because the teachers see the value, but they don't really want to play swing either. That's a thing too. But it's like, it's fine if you don't want to swing on every song. But I mean, swing is like the most amazing feeling. Why would you not want to learn how to swing? And it's something that takes a lot of time and practice to really be able to access and understand and feel good doing. I think we still have a great obligation as educators to teach the American Songbook and make sure that students are learning it, because those songs are so different. Like if just to compare two songs from my album, you know, like New York State of Mind versus Our Love Is Here to Stay, which we're going to hear next. Our Love Is Here to Stay is completely, and these other mostly 32 bar compositions, I think of them as transparent. Like you can lay anything you want on top and meld it with the song because it's not directing you so much. It's there for you to embody it, for you to do a treatment, an arrangement of however, you know, you want it to be. Whereas pop songs that don't follow that form and maybe don't have like most of them don't have like as high level of a harmonic exploration either as the Great American Songbook does. They're not as flexible or as transparent. They dictate so many more things that you must do or else the song is not the song anymore. Whereas there's just like an infinite number of possibilities that you can sort of create over most jazz standards, over most American songbook songs. So I think that plus swing, you know, are the two main reasons why we want to continue learning these great songs and not let that tradition die, because it's also the foundation of jazz. You know, it came up at the time when those songs were being written. It took them out of the plays and brought them into the mainstream music scene. And I think there's just a lot of value there. And also, I know all the topics aren't always so deep, but it's so funny. Monica, I tell you, like, actually, I've been October, November, I toured a lot, and I sang a lot of songs from the album to promote it. Even if it was just duo, I'd say, this album is a big band, and we are a very small band, but these are the same songs. But I just found like, oh my God, I found myself almost in tears singing Our Love Is Here to Stay. In time, the Rockies may tumble, Gibraltar may crumble. They're only made of clay, but our love is here to stay. And that is so deep. Just because it's going here doesn't mean that those words don't pack a punch. And especially in our, you know, COVID world where everything is changing beneath our feet, you know, every day, to think of love as more powerful than a rock. It really was an amazing revelation. And I might not have thought of that last year when I was singing it. Every song, as I sing it through my life, has shifting meanings or things that I feel that I can tag onto at different times, you know, in my life, or when the song, when a line might register to me in a different way. And I think that's the work of truly great work of art, is when you can continue to engage in it, with it in a changing way over a lifetime, you know. So I feel like these, I mean, we always say, well, these are the songs that stood the test of time. They did, and they do, and they will.
You're absolutely right. It's a trademark of a great song if you have imagery that goes beyond one moment, but attracts, you know, everybody from all walks of life and has that meaning for them. And yeah, it's tricky, you know, you know, once it's a good song after a certain amount of time. So right now, trying to figure out which ones they are that stand that test of time, right? The Beatles kind of went there. They've become the classics now. They stood the test of time, and some of the Billy Joel songs, but it's always tricky when you look at the current pop and landscape and think, I wonder who the ones are that will be there in 20, 30, 40 years. Well, I think we should listen to Our Love Is Here to Stay and just enjoy it, and definitely listen to the words and get that meaning. So here's Our Love Is Here to Stay from the album Sky Blossom, featuring my guest today, Alexis Cole.
It's very clear our love is here to stay, not for a year, but ever and a day. The radio and the telephone and the movies that we know may just be passing fancies, and in time may go. But oh my dear, our love is here to stay. Together we're going a long, long way. In time the Rockies may crumble, Gibraltar may tumble, they're only made of clay. But our love is here to stay. it's very clear our love is here to stay. Not for a year, but ever and a day. The radio and the telephone and the movies that we know may just be passing fancies, and in time may go. But oh my dear, our love is here to stay. Together we're going a long, long way. Even the Rockies may crumble, Gibraltar may tumble, they're only made of clay. But our love is here to stay.
Our Love is Here to Stay, a Gershwin classic from the Great American Songbook, as recorded on the new album Sky Blossom by my guest today, Alexis Cole, who you also heard on vocals. And we'll close out, because it's the holidays and the spirit, we'll close out with a version of Oh Holy Night. In Alexis fashion, don't expect it to be as the usual Oh Holy Night. It has its twists and turns. Tell us a little bit about that version and improvisation as a vocalist in terms of that too.
One of the producers from Sky Blossom asked me if I wanted to re-release my Christmas album on his label, Kabir Segal. I jumped at the opportunity. It was released on Motema in 2009. And it's a huge production. It was my first big production, but I figured you only make a Christmas album once. And I had just come back from my last contract in Japan, so I had a wad of yen in my pocket to spend on this album. It had 8 recording sessions with there are more than 50 musicians on this album. So it's a huge production. And I'm not singing on every song. Some of them are just commissioned arrangements that I commissioned and recorded, because I wanted to make an album that I would be able to listen to every Christmas for the rest of my life. So I wanted to make it a real mix, and it has world music elements and string quartet and children's choir, percussion, and it's just I really still stand behind this album. It's a fantastic album, and I'm so happy that I was able to executive produce and bring to life this great album and sing on. Kabir suggested that we have a new bonus track to add that would make it a fresh release. So I thought, immediately of Josh Nelson, who I've worked with once before, but who I'm a huge fangirl of, his playing and his composing and arranging. And during the pandemic, his music was really important to me. I just, especially his tracks with Kathleen Grace on vocals are just some of my favorite music in the world. And I just really love these songs. So anyway, I called him up hoping that he might want to do something together, and he loved my arrangement idea. It's just piano and vocals. So he, took my shell idea and fleshed it out into something really fantastic. His playing is so wonderful. He takes the solo between the verses. Oh, I started reading about the lyricist of this. So this song's originally a French carol. It got a treatment in English. The lyricist actually was a transcendentalist, somebody who believes in the inherent goodness of man. And he was a Unitarian minister. Okay. And I just thought that really, and also there's like a particular love of nature too in transcendentalism. So it really resonated with me, and I felt very passionate about recording this lyric. And it also has like an abolitionist bent. The slave is our brother, and we should all be free and equal. And that's still a message that people need to hear. And I actually originally had some sound effects of like a baby crying and some other like chanting at the end. It wasn't approved in production, which is fine. I think when you choose to work with people in a production capacity, you've got to generally try and listen to them and accept their expertise. And it's a stronger project usually when you do that. So it's not my nature, but it's a good advice that I give myself and take. So I was glad to have his input. At the end, there's a section where the piano is kind of waning out, and I did some improvisation, which is really influenced by my study of Indian classical singing and my love of world music and sort of off the beaten path from bebop scat singing for sure. I tried to bring like a chant-like quality, and I mean this song is about the night of Jesus' birth. I mean, it's just this night where like light came down and, exploded the world into a different consciousness. So I wanted to sort of try and bring that out. Also, like, there's so much stuff that I'm unhappy with. There's so much like great evils in the world today, like systems that are failing us and existential threat of climate change. And I just feel like the people who are in charge will be held accountable, for the destruction that they're And I feel like this song has that like equal measures of wrathfulness, and like and wonderment and joy. So I tried to bring that out.
That's excellent. And if somebody could see us, which they don't, but I'm looking at you while the sun is shining and gives you this little halo. That is so cool. I'll be talking about this. But yeah, I so appreciate you taking the time today to share with us and about your music and about your approach to life, which is such a positive, adventurous, and forward-looking one that we all need. So much appreciated, and keep at it, and keep Paul.
Thank you for all you do for the jazz community and for educators, and for putting this wonderful series together, and for inviting me. I'm so honored to be on your roster. Thank you.
Great to have you. Yeah, I still remember the night at Cleopatra's Needle in New York when I happened to get to do a song with you years ago. Oh, Holy Night, as performed by my guest today, Alexis Cole, with Josh Nelson. Wishing everybody best holidays, whatever you celebrate, and may all your wishes come true for 2022. Thanks, Alexis.
Thank you, Monica. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Are brightly shining. It is the night of our dear Savior's birth. Long lay the world in sin and error pining, till he appeared and the soul felt its worth. A thrill of hope, the weary world rejoices, for yonder breaks a new and glorious morn. Oh, fall on your knees, oh, hear the angel voices, oh, night divine, oh, night when Christ was born. Truly he taught us to love one another. His law is love, and his gospel is peace. Chains shall he break, for the slave is our brother, and in his name all oppression shall cease. A thrill of hope, the weary world rejoices, for yonder breaks a new and glorious morn. Oh, fall on your knees, oh, hear the angel voices, oh, night divine, oh, night when Christ was born, oh, night, oh,
thank you for listening to Talking Jazz. My guest today was vocalist, arranger, educator, entrepreneur, Alexis Cole. Tune in for Talking Jazz every Thursday at 11 a.m. and every Monday at 7 p.m. right here on WETF 105.7 FM in South Bend, Indiana, or online at WETFthejazzstation.org. Also find videos of previous shows on YouTube on the Monica Herzig channel. That's MonikaHerzig. Subscribe to get the newest updates. Thank you for listening.